Today we're going to be practicing graphing equations in slope-intercept form, and we'll do a couple that are in point-slope form. So before we start practicing, I want to look at this formula that's at the top. This is the slope-intercept formula, and it's like the most popular form that we use. So slope is the m, and I like to talk about how that's how an equation moves, but it's really, in the first two modules, we've been talking about the action. So it is what it adds or subtracts, right? What is the action that happens repeatedly? And we also think of slope, when we think of slope, we think of rise over run, meaning the top number is how many you go up or how many you go down, if it's positive or negative. And the bottom number is how many you go to the right or how many you go to the left. So that's the first number. It's like pretty key in making a table or a graph or listening to a story. And the other number is our y-intercept. And in this formula, it starts with the b, and I like to say that's where my problem begins at 0. So that's the starting value at 0. It's what, right? So that's that first output in the table. Sorry, 0b. So the other thing to remember is that slope is always touching x. It's always attached to x. So sometimes they'll flip the order. They might write the equation in y equals b plus mx. Whatever's with the x is your slope, and the number that's not with x, I sometimes call that the plane number, that's your y-intercept that starts at 0. So let's do this first problem as an example. So I'm looking, it says y equals 1/2 x minus 2. So I'm going to find the number that's attached to x, and that's going to be my action. So that's 1/2 x. So that's my slope. So my slope is 1/2. And that, when I graph it, I'm going to say the top number is how many I rise. And since it's positive, I'm going to go up. And the bottom number is the run, which it's also positive, so I'm going to go over. So up 1 over 2. So that's how I graph my slope, but I first need to figure out where I start. And so the plane number here is minus 2, which means that my y-intercept is negative 2, which is the point 0, negative 2. So I'm going to go to my graph, and I'm going to find negative 2 on the y-axis. This is my y-axis. And so negative 2 is right here. Your y-intercept is always on the y-axis. That's why it's called the y-intercept. So at 0, 2 is my first point. That's my starting value. And then my slope is 1/2, which we talked about goes up 1 and over 2. And that's my new point. And then I'm going to keep doing that. Up 1, over 2. And then those lines are just to help me see what I'm doing. Up 1, over 2. Up 1, over 2. Up 1, over 2. So your slope, remember, is your repeated action, so you're going to keep repeating it. The other thing that's helpful to know is that rising 1 and running 2 is the slope. But if I need to get this back half of my graph, this other side, I need to do the opposite, which is minus 1 and minus 2. Negative 1 divided by negative 2 is still positive 1/2, but it will help me graph the lower half of my graph. So I can go down 1 and backwards 2 and still follow along on that same line. Down 1, backwards 2, down 1, backwards 2, down 1, backwards 2, down 1. So if you need to get the other side of your graph, you just do the opposite of both the top and the bottom of the slope. Okay, so let's see. This one, they're trying to trick you a little bit. So first I'm going to look at my equation. I'm going to say I need to find the slope, and that's the number that's attached to x. So some people might think that it's 5 because that's the number that goes first, but the slope is actually negative 2 because it's the number that's attached to x, and it's minus 2x. So I would say that my slope is negative 2. and my y-intercept is the plane number that's all by itself, which is 5. So on my graph, I'm going to start at the point 0, 5 on the y-axis. 1, 2, 3, 4, positive 5, that's my y-intercept. And now my slope is negative 2, but in order for me to do that rise over run thinging, I need a fraction. So how do I turn a whole number into a fraction? I divide by 1. So negative 2 divided by 1 is still negative 2. So that means I'm going to rise negative 2, which means I'm really going down. And I'm going to run positive 1, which means I'm going to the right. So down 2 over 1. Down 2 over 1. Down 2 over 1. And I'm doing it repeatedly because that's my repeated action. And then I want to get this back part of my graph that wasn't the down 2, so I need to flip it. I need to reverse both the top and the bottom. So positive 2 over negative 1 is still also 2 divided by negative 1 is still going to give me negative 2. So it's still the same number, same slope, but it helps me go backwards. I'm going to go up 2, backwards 1, up 2, backwards 1. And that's how you graph the point or the slope-intercept form. So there's a whole bunch of other examples. This one doesn't have a number, a plane number, it just has the slope. So that means it starts at the origin, not staff. Starts at 0, 0. And at the bottom, I have an example of a point slope form. So point slope follows this formula, y equals m times x opposite x, actual y, or x minus x positive y. So you look at your equation and you find the number that's still being multiplied by x. And that is negative 2/3. It's being multiplied with those parentheses. So negative 2/3 is my slope because it's attached to x. And then in my ordered pair, the number that's in the parentheses with x is my x value, but it's the opposite of the x value. So since this is a positive 8, this should be a negative 8. It's always x opposite of the x value. So x opposite of positive 8 is negative 8, and then the actual y value is positive 5. So once you have your equation and you found all your key pieces, instead of starting at the y-axis, that's what I would do in slope-intercept form. For point-slope form, I get to start at a random point. So they gave me this point, negative 8, 5, so that's where I start graphing from. So I'm going to go backwards 8 and up 5, and that's my starting point. And then I'm going to use the slope to graph it. So negative 2/3 means I'm going to rise negative 2. I'm going to run to the right 3. Down 2 over 3. Down 2 over 3. Down 2 over 3. All right.